LinkedIn presents.
Welcome back to the Forbes Books Podcast, where I speak with some of the most creative and successful humans in the world of business. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila. Evan Morgenstein, the founder and CEO of the Digital Renegades and Celeb Experts, is here with me today. Evan is a pioneer in the fields of influencer marketing and talent management. In this episode, Evan will share his insights on how he built his successful businesses, his thoughts on influencer marketing, and the trends he sees in the industry. He'll also share some advice for entrepreneurs looking to build their businesses online and achieve success. How are you, Evan?
I'm doing great. How are you? Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Evan. It's been a long time, and I want to get into influencer marketing because you are the man, the myth, the legend, one of the biggest influencers in the world of influencer marketing. So for folks uninitiated, how does it work from the product side to connecting with that star?
So listen, the market changes every 6 months. So how it worked when I first got in to how it is now is so uniquely different. When I first got into this, Instagram and Facebook were the two hottest platforms. But when I decided to put my sports marketing business out of business and focus 100% on influencer marketing, I knew that TikTok was going to be the place to go. And depending on the influencer and which platform they're big on, that really dictates how you're going to build their brand and ultimately what does it look like to build their own products. So I mostly, but not exclusively, work with people on TikTok. And if you have a lot of momentum on TikTok, in other words, you're growing fast, you have a big community and your community is very engaged, you have a very good chance if you come up with the right products and you have the right temperament. You don't talk at people, you talk to people. It's a self-help business. You're making people feel good about themselves. You have a real opportunity to build a product line that's going to be very, very successful.
So you're talking about product lines from scratch these folks are building?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, we have, think of it this way, with retail being so precarious, you have so many manufacturers, both big and small, that in years past knew that they were going to sell X amount of millions of units to certain manufacturers that they work with that are going to turn around and sell to retail. Well, with retail now being so unsure and unclear, these manufacturers for the first time have to now compete with their own customers. And they're looking for unique opportunities to build big lines of product that they have equity in. And the best market for them to do it is influencer marketing.
Wow. And give me a couple examples because I know you're big in the food space. But give me a couple examples of successful product launches with your TikTok stars.
Well, one of them is Cooking with Daryl, who is a former Microsoft executive. He was actually in charge of retail sales for Xbox, and they did obviously billions of dollars in sales. Retired, very successful, has been involved with a couple of startups that have gone very well. And his young daughter at the beginning of the pandemic got him involved with TikTok. His second video went crazy viral, like 20 million views. And he was off to the races, and now he's thought of like as the dad of TikTok. So this one creator, Daryl Postelnick out of Chicago, now has done his own salt and pepper shaker, sells out all the time. He has, crates, containers coming from China with it. He's done his own IPA. He's got his own swag. He's working on a couple of other new product lines. It's just incredible. He is now not only a brand, he's an entrepreneur. And that's the thing. Most people don't realize that influencers by nature are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But they could take it to that next level and not just be entrepreneurial, but legitimately have their own product lines.
And this is a perfect example of how the space has changed, Evan, because you and I are old enough to remember back in the day of the olden times of Instagram, you'd see these companies reach out to influencers and they'd say, we'll give you $10,000 if you take a picture with our, soda can. And now they've sort of taken control of their own destiny by now creating products themselves as opposed to waiting for someone to offer the product for them.
What I say is when a brand comes to me and says, we want to hire one of your creators to do one post, I tell them all the time, I have a better idea. Why don't we save you the money? let's grab hands and let's pray, because you have about as much chance of success in praying as you do doing one post. Because the thing is, the audience is more sophisticated. They don't like being sold. B2C is dead. It's all C2C now in social media. But what does C2C mean? Customer to customer means that my client has to turn around and really make sure that their community is fed with information and that their community is talking about things other than just products. So think about it. If I said to you, what do you think of Coachella? Immediately you're going to have and evoke, thoughts. It may be dusty, it may be music, it may be cultural, it may be partying, whatever it is. You have an idea of what that is. South by Southwest is another one. Well, that's what I tell people when they're building their brand. When someone's following you, they have to feel like they're not just there to buy product, and they're not just there to watch you create content. They want to be there because the other people that are watching are all in a community together and they're talking to each other. And that's why TikTok's become so powerful, because their TikTok duets gives a creator the ability to bring in their customers, their followers, and get their opinion about what's going on, or even showing how they use their own product.
And I think we had a conversation back in the early days of the pandemic. It was early 2020. And you told me about how bullish you were at TikTok. And at the time, TikTok was making that slow climb, and then it just exploded in 2020. Why were you so bullish about TikTok at the time, before it became so prevalent, where it became, a punchline on talk shows, and mothers and children were both on TikTok. So why were you so bullish on TikTok's success? Because at the time, it was like the big three. It was Instagram,
Right.
Twitter, Facebook. And then all of a sudden you have this, company coming from China, reworked from, I think it was called Musical.ly,
Right.
and rebranding to TikTok. Why did you think it would be such a big hit?
So I come from 3 generations of entrepreneurs. I always knew I was going to own my own company. And the reality is that every one of my family members that own their own company, by and large, worked from home. So working from home was something that I knew. And while so many people freaked out about working from home, I did it for 27 years. And what I knew about working from home that most people didn't have a sense of is that entertainment, in terms of your free time and just the time that you had on social media, needed to be filled with people watching other people living their lives. Because if you were just watching still imagery like Instagram at the time, it wasn't going to be enough. It wasn't going to fill the vacuum of you being in the house and not going stir crazy. And I'd been watching TikTok for almost a year and a half before, and I just had a sense. And I bet everything. I had a sports marketing business that I already put 2 of my 4 kids through college, and I felt really confident that by closing that agency and starting an mostly all TikTok agency was the right thing. And the people that I recruited that at that time had 100,000, 200,000 followers, now have 7 million, 5 million, 10 million, 4 million followers, and are making, $1 million a year.
And you used a phrase that you never really hear. It's C2C. Talk to me about that dynamic, because we all know about B2C
Right.
and B2B, but C2C. Talk to me about that.
Social media, good social media marketing, is predicated on building a community where people talk about lots of different things in their life, right? I'm a 57-year-old dad. I work out a little bit. I try and eat healthy. I go to certain places and I do certain things. And I identify with other people that do the same. So if you have a community of people 45 to 65 years old, you're not going to just feed them information about a product. You need to feed them information about their lifestyle. That's why they'll come back. That's why, other than looking for their For You page on their phone, they're going to search for your content, because they want to know more about what everybody else is doing in that community. Well, that's C2C. It's not just that someone's talking to somebody else and saying bye. It's that somebody feels confident and comfortable in the community that's been created. And in that community, a follower is going to say, hey, you know what? I saw this amazing product. And then they start talking amongst themselves. That's power. That's how brands like Liquid Death have turned into absolute unicorns. But that's what social media can provide you. And everybody's chasing the same thing. The unfortunate part is too many brands are getting horrible advice from people that really have no idea what they're doing.
And I'm assuming for something like this, just like any kind of entrepreneurial venture, there's systems and processes. Is there for what you do? Because it
Yeah.
is very much big picture, and it is sort of that intangible. Like you can't write down, like you can't, like I'm sure, Evan, even to this day, you couldn't figure out what makes one person successful as opposed to another if they were doing the similar type of thing. So, what kind of systems and processes do you put in place to make sure that these TikTok influencers slash entrepreneurs become successful?
Well, I think the way that the market's changed and where social media has been amazingly affected is the ability to create user generated content, or UGC. And what do you do with it? In the past, you want someone to send in a review. Then you had somebody send a picture with the product. Then people started creating video of them utilizing the product. So I just signed a new client. It's a Zuna Fresh. It's a tea tree oil based product. It's not just a perfuming product for rooms, bathrooms, anywhere for pets, whatever. It actually takes the mold and mildew out of the air. Okay, so it's got a real function. What we're going to do with them is they have over 500,000 customers already. We're going to start taking their customers and having them talk to each other about the effectiveness of the product. And then we're going to use influencers, macro influencers, to elevate those customers through things like TikTok Live. What we're focusing on is giving a platform for the customer for the first time to feel that they have a platform to go out and talk and share about their successes. And their customer base loves that. So it's no longer just, filling out a review on Amazon. They actually now get to create their own visibility and their own sort of fame amongst their family and friends. And it's a great way for people just to feel like, wow, I've got a lot of people now that are talking to me, that are befriending me because they saw me on this thing I'm doing for Zuna Live. It gets people talking. It gets people friends. That was the original pretense behind Facebook. Right. You could talk to family and friends and you can share things, and then other people could share them, and other people in your group would see their stuff and then follow them, and everything. When the water rises, all boats rise. Well, for some reason we hit a drought, but I feel like the water's starting to rise again, and TikTok's the platform that's really rising with all the followers.
Wow. And, there's always been this old business adage of, don't put all your eggs in one basket. The reason I bring this up is when a lot of folks, especially media companies, essentially put all their content on Facebook and were making money off the clicks, they were thriving. But once Facebook changed the algorithm, they weren't getting the clicks and companies went out of business. Now there's a lot of conversation around TikTok and the possibility that the US government may stop TikTok from being used in the United States. What do you say to your TikTok influencers about that? Because a lot of them, their livelihood depends on this social media platform. Again, not that there's a chance that this TikTok thing ban might happen, but who knows? It's possible.
It's a reality.
It's a
So
reality.
look, first of all, we have to get out the information that's actually true. So here's the first bit of information. The U.S. government is saying that any U.S. government device can't have TikTok on it. Now, look, we're also going through a period where our relationship with China is probably at an all-time low, at least prior to Nixon, I would say, right? It's at that all-time low where we don't trust each other. And so as part of that, this is what they call low-hanging fruit for politicians. It's easy to fight the bad guy, the boogeyman. And China's the boogeyman. Add to that, with Wuhan and COVID, there's a narrative about China and now the balloons flying over the United States. And I'm not saying it's not true, but there's all these things that are happening simultaneously over a period of time that lead people to believe that China is a bad actor, the relationship with Russia in this Ukraine situation. It makes them look bad. So TikTok, which is clearly owned by the Chinese government, although they say that they don't have any of the mass data storage in China, it's it's offshore. They're still concerned. Now, hey, guess what? I type in information all the time on Amazon. Sometimes I even just think something and I get an ad for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I would be worried about social media everywhere and how our data is being processed, used, and sold, because I'm getting a lot of things, advertised to me that I thought about but never actually searched for. There's a lot of really high-end data analytics going on through platforms that aren't even owned by Chinese. So I think it's too big to fail. You have 100 million Americans on it. But you know what? They said that about the Titanic. Like everything else, I had clients at one point on Vine, Poseidon. Who are these platforms now? They disappear. If they're my prediction for this, and I've been pretty right about this for a long time, is that the next really great big platform is going to be 100% streaming. You're not going to be able to create content and edit it. You have to actually stream live. Twitch was like that, but the problem with Twitch is that it became too much for the gamers, and anybody over 17 years old just didn't feel like that was a place for them. So I think the next platform that comes along where it's all live all the time, where people get to see people legitimately that aren't made up, edited, all that kind of nonsense that people are getting so sick of these days, I think that's where we're going to go. And so if TikTok ends up being shut down, they can't force them to have a US based owner, or at least part of that, which I think actually will ultimately happen.
Yeah.
I think there'll be another platform. There's always another platform, and I'll just deviate to that. It's just the way, when you're an entrepreneur, you mitigate risk and you overcome fear. And if you're good at that, then you'll find another place to go, and you'll find other clients that work there as well.
And is that what you're telling your TikTok influencers who may be worried about this right now, being like, oh, shoot, man, I've already built up this brand. I'm selling products for TikTok, and then one day it could all be gone. Do you sort of tell them what you just told me? Like, hey, listen, something else will come along for you? Because I'm sure for many of them, this is it. Like they've put, again, using the old timey phrase of all their eggs in one basket. How are you sort of allaying their fears in terms of, what could possibly happen?
Yeah, I'm not talking to them about what the next platform is, because that's just too ethereal.
Yeah.
I'm talking to them about, YouTube Shorts, Snapchat, Instagram, even Pinterest, which is 78% women. Great place for our brand advertisers. They've really done a great job of changing what they're doing. And then as something comes along, I'll make them aware of it. I'll tell them to get their names. So like if a new platform came along and it's called Brick, I'm just making this up, right? But Brick seems like it's, taken off. I'll notify all my clients immediately to go save their name or their account names on Brick, so they're protected. And if it takes off, they already have a presence.
It sounds like you're a financial advisor giving some advice about the IRA and basically diversification. Sure, you're a TikTok star, but you should definitely be doing things. And I do see that. You'll see TikTok stars posting on the gram, posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook. So you think that's important as well, right? Not just being 100% TikTok all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean they're reposting the IG Reels now because IG Reels is hot, and they're smart. These are all entrepreneurs, right? So they understand they're making most of their money on TikTok, but there's still opportunities and they're still making money elsewhere, just not as much.
Right. And I want to talk about some of your opportunities. You're collaborating with the New Hope Network to educate brands on how to make the most out of influencer marketing. First, set a little context. Who is New Hope Network?
So New Hope is the agency that produces Expo West and Expo East, which is the largest natural food show in the world. And since we're so heavily in the food industry, right, that is our expertise amongst, I think, many. We have the Food Renegades, which is the largest group of food creators on social media, over 27 creators with over 35 million followers. I decided, because I've been to their show out in California, which was just this past week, several times. And the truth is, I decided that instead of being in the position to have to cold call like everybody else, I wanted to be in the industry. I wanted to be respected. I feel like we do a good job. I feel like we add a lot. And I feel like there's a lot of disinformation, if not lack of information, amongst food manufacturers and producers on how to utilize social media effectively. So I've never had a budget for this. It's not anything I ever thought of before. I don't do any advertising. It's all sort of word of mouth or people finding our clients. I decided to invest a lot of money in being an advertising partner with New Hope. And what's great is we're getting directly to the companies. My history in this business is that a lot of companies come to us after they already wasted their friends and family money on horrible agencies that took their money and did nothing for them. And it's sad, Joe. It's sad. You see them and they're broken, and now they want to go for the home run swing because they're absolutely desperate. I want to find companies that haven't spent all this money poorly, and I want to give them really sound business advice. And look, I'd rather tell someone not to do it if I don't think it's right. I don't think everybody has to do influencer marketing. In fact, I'm not sure it's a right call for every company, but inevitably through your growth pattern and as you scale, it's unavoidable.
Hmm. And the folks that that are just jumping into it late, is it too late for companies that have not done it so far? Because we get to that point where it's catch up, and you say
Yeah.
people just start throwing money at people they probably shouldn't have. If a company has already screwed up a couple influential marketing campaigns, do they go back to the well? Like, do you talk to folks that have been sort of burned by other agencies when it comes to these sort of campaigns?
So when I go to Expo West, this is a great answer to your question. When I go to Expo West every year, there's probably 500 companies that aren't there from the year before.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that says everything. And there's also 670 plus new companies. So, look, like any industry, we're not here to make everybody successful because they can't be. There are people with flawed business acumen. There are people that have products that just aren't going to pass the mustard. You know what the most interesting thing is walking the show? Because I've been going for 10 years. What I've recognized is that the digital printing industry has changed the food industry so drastically that even a company that's got a lot of warts can look amazing on a shelf based on the packaging, based on the boxing, based on the booth. And they may have as many warts as a company 10 years ago that had horrible packaging. So it's so interesting. It takes a while to find out if a company really has a chance of being successful. A lot of companies want to go to retail, but they don't recognize selling in is hard, selling out is harder.
Hmm.
And that's really when companies come to us and say, look, we just got into Costco, we got into Walmart, we're getting a test at Kroger's, we're in Publix. How the hell do we get customers in the door buying our product? So you have a lot of great manufacturers, you have a lot of smart people that know how to make really good packaging, but selling, getting customers to actually do something, it's really difficult. And that's really where, again, there are the unicorns like Liquid Death, and there are others, but the majority of the companies out there have to figure out how to educate the customers, how to build interest, and how to keep them interested so they'll continue to buy the product. It's so hard to do. And then the other thing that I found in the show like Expo West is how frequently there's a change in what's the hot product. So a few years ago it was beets. A few years ago before that, it was cauliflower. Then it was coconut water. I can't tell you, I saw maybe 3 coconut water companies where 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, there was 20. So the market and what product is hot in the food space, it meanders. And it's more trendy and faddish when the new superfood is found. You see, a couple of years ago, so many of these sort of like impossible meat companies,
Yeah.
now you're seeing companies, the best companies in the world for that are the Israelis, because they're doing it with 6 ingredients and they're all spices. So the other companies that are doing it have 16 to 20, and most of them are food dyes.
Wow.
So the market, it changes, it requires better, and it keeps pushing companies in and out.
Unbelievable. From you said you visited that show last week. Were there any trends that kind of stood out to you? That is the next the next thing that
Oh
will
yeah.
be clouding up our feed in the
Yep.
next several weeks.
You ready?
Okay.
Mushrooms.
So
I don't
funny
mean
you said
I don't mean
that. Yes, I'm
psychedelic.
seeing.
Joe, don't get too excited.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
no.
mean
It's not the
psychedelic.
one Aaron Rodgers uses. No, no. It's so funny you said that. I just saw an article about they're making like, man, I can't remember what product was, but like
Everything.
they're making everything out of
Everything. They're
mushrooms, right?
making seltzer water. They're making energy drinks. They're making, food products. They're making everything with mushrooms. Mushrooms, take on other flavors well, but they also have really, really good health benefits to them as well. So mushrooms, you're going to see mushrooms blowing up at your retail store.
Interesting. Was there any product that you're like, oh, okay, I would try that because, like you said, they could do it just. Was there one that you're like, oh, that could work with that in that vertical?
I can't tell you that there was a mushroom product that stood out to me, but I will tell you because there's always new, innovative, low calorie, low carb beverages that are really focused on low sugar as well. And this one company, I have nothing to do with them. I just want to make that point. I have no relationship with them. I don't even know who owns it, but it's a company called Roar, ROAR. I drank their mango water drink. It had like 15 calories. You would think it would taste like crap. It was probably the best thing that I had the entire time I was there.
Wow. Okay. Well, good to
Yeah,
know.
so you never know. You just never know. And so the funny thing is, you got to go there without having breakfast because everybody's giving you samples of stuff. I came back. I'm like, Jesus Christ! I should have gone to Hawaii. I gained as much weight.
Oh, that's funny. And you make a great point about the drinks because I remember I interviewed the CEO of Celsius,
Yeah.
maybe 2.5 years ago, and at the
Wow.
time they were scrappy. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, this is fine. And they'd sent me like all this Celsius, and I was like, I can't drink all this. I got to give it to my friends.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, turn to 2023, Celsius is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like
They blew up.
everyone I know, it has their can at their sitting on the desk in the office. There's like
Right.
big signs for it in 7-Eleven. What does it take for a company to do that? Like if you as an out, I don't think you've worked
Right.
with Celsius, but what does it take to go from that drink that's maybe in 2 or 3 stores in your neighborhood to then all of a sudden being everywhere? How do you companies make that big jump?
Well, okay. So first of all, I've definitely had some of my clients paid by Celsius. So I just
Okay.
want to say that, but I have no ongoing relationship with them. It's an industry by industry thing, Joe. So in the beverage industry, which look, you start a beverage knowing you're going to have to spend tens of millions of dollars, and your hope is you get bought by a big. That's
Right.
the only reason you go in the beverage industry.
Yeah.
Period. The only company that said no to the bigs to this point is 5 Hour Energy. They were offered billions of dollars. I wasn't sure if it was Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper
Mm.
Snapple. I forget who it was, and maybe all three has offered them billions, and they've said no. Every other beverage company starts and knows that they're going to have to get 2, 3, 4 rounds of funding minimum, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they're going to turn around, hopefully get bought. So in that industry, the nature of it is you have to get mass acceptance, and you're spending at a loss because you want to get bought. Just like the product Body Armor with Kobe Bryant,
Sure.
he invested in that smartly because he knew they weren't going to make any money until they got sold. But once they got sold, he made a fortune.
It's so funny you mentioned Kobe Bryant and Body Armor because I interviewed Darren Ravel, the sports.
I love Darren.
Yeah, so I interviewed him, and he started his own RTD called Kickstand, which is a ready to drink with it's like a spicy cocktail drink.
Right.
And we had this whole conversation, and I know, as you know, with Darren, he's very all knowing when it comes to business. He knows the ins and
Yeah.
outs of it. And I wrapped up the interview by joking, can't wait to see what you do next with Kickstand, which means inevitably you selling Kickstand to it. And he laughed out loud because, as you were talking about, these folks that create a drink, because the thing is, you cannot scale up without capital. And the
Right.
only way to do that is by selling to a major brand like the Cokes and the Pepsis of the world. I mean, the road is littered with companies that were sort of bought up by a major brand, then all of a sudden disappeared because the brand
Right.
didn't realize. So that is a risk. But if you don't have this sort of spiritual connection to your company, it's like you said, you grow it as much as you can, then you sell it off, and then you take a nice big check and
Right.
live
Right. And
happily ever after.
right. And so the answer to your question is that Celsius went into specific markets, and in the beverage industry, it's always New York first.
Yep.
If you can get in the bodegas as well as into the mass stores, you have a really good chance because look, New York's a place where people are walking down the street, they walk in a bodega and grab a bottle of something. And if you don't have distribution in those independents in a place like New York, weirdly enough, you're not going to be successful. And if you blow it out in New York, they're going to want you in LA, Miami, Chicago, Dallas, Boston, right? And then once you blow it out in those specific ADIs, areas of dominant influence, now you got momentum. And now the retailers want to bring you in mass.
Mm.
And now you have to back that up. And that's what Celsius does. They do a great job of their influencer marketing. They've got spokespeople. They're running TV campaigns. They're all in. They are a mature marketer. They went from entrepreneurial startup to a full-on mature beverage marketer, and they're doing it exceedingly well. And I'm sure their retailers are certainly happy with the sell-through of their product. They're getting end caps. They're doing it right, but it takes a lot. It's not easy. I'm sure they have, either from a board standpoint, but certainly from a day-to-day execution standpoint, some industry vets, and that takes money. And not every company can afford going and getting the best of the best. And if you're hoping that you're going to go on Shark Tank and change your fortunes, forget that also.
And lastly, Evan, You mentioned your Food Renegades, which is one of the brands underneath your umbrella there, but it's a big part of your business, food. What is it about food on the internet? And I know there's so many jokes been made about people cracking like, oh, here's the photo of my lunch, here's my salad, blah, blah, blah. But why do you think there's this magical connection between social media and food? Have you ever thought about it? Because I know it's a big part of your business, and obviously,
It's why I started the business,
yeah.
right?
So why do you think it is? Why is that magical connection? Because before social media and food, you'd have to read a food review in the New York Times, or you'd have to come across a
Right.
product in a store. Now there's so many different ways to discover something. So talk to me about this dynamic between food and social media.
So I'll give you my philosophy of why I did this, and then I'll tell you why I think it's the way it is today. When I was deciding what I was going to do in terms of influencer marketing in 2019, it was really clear to me that the food distribution channel was messed up. People were home and didn't know how they were going to get fed, and the fear was rampant. So I said, look, if I'm going to be anywhere, I'm going to be in a place where we can solve people's number one fear, how to get fed, right? So that's why I got into food, because there's perishable, which has to be marketed immediately to be sold or it all goes to waste. And then there's stuff that's shelf stable, which has to still hit their numbers, because no matter what, these companies are still run based on hitting numbers. So I went after food. And the other thing was, food was an older demographic in TikTok, where everyone said, don't go to TikTok, it's just kids shaking their ass. I proved them wrong, because I knew the food demographic was older than that. Now, once you start having these food creators, I think the reason why people are gravitating towards social media, both showing their own and also seeing others, is it's such a visceral part of your day. 2 to 3 times a day, you're engaging in food. And the more beautiful it looks, the better it tastes. And the better it tastes, the more you enjoy it. And so it's really about, just for a little bit of time, a few times a day, putting something in front of you that you can share with others and say, hey, I'm okay. I'm doing okay. Look what I'm eating. Look, showing off. It's a little bravado, but it's also just letting people know that you're okay. And then when you see other people do it, you're inspired. Because I've been cooking steaks forever, but I never cooked steaks like cooking for Daryl or Grok Boys Barbecue or Chef Cuso. Never cooked a steak that looked that beautiful. Now, you know what? I feel like I can, because I take a lot of what they do and I can replicate it. So it's absolutely upgraded my ability to make food better for myself and anybody in my family that's here. And I'll tell you, that's really a beautiful thing. That is why social media and food have such strong ties to the watcher, because you're actually doing something special for somebody. And that's not easy to do these days.
His name is Evan Morgenstein, the founder and CEO of Digital Renegades and Celeb Experts. Evan, it's always a delight catching up with you, and also you're sort of the Zoltar machine, living Zoltar machine of being able to predict the future. So I'm going to try to find a streaming company to invest in, because that it sounds like that's going to be the next bit.
I'm with you, or maybe you and I should start our own.
Yeah, Evan, you know what? I don't know if we're smart enough to do that, but hey, listen, I'm up for anything. But Evan, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Joe.
And that'll do it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.